Hello, everyone. I am Greg, the Mesh's ComponentOne Product Manager, and today's CodeClinic is all about themes and WinForms applications. What we're going to cover today are some challenges for styling the standard .NET controls in a WinForms application. And I'm also going to then cover what solutions we provide with the ComponentOne WinForms edition. We'll cover things like how to add a theme. I'll show you how to quickly add one of our professionally designed themes without writing any code. I'll show you how to customize a theme using our theme designer, which is used to design a custom theme from scratch or even modify a theme. And I'll show how to provide multiple user-defined themes in your application. So essentially how to change the themes at runtime so you can let your users choose the theme that they like best. And along the way, I will also share some future plans and things we have in the pipeline for our themes. And at any point, if you have any questions, please just use the YouTube chat or comments and submit your questions there, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. So some of the challenges that .NET developers face for WinForms include, the first and foremost, Visual Studio and .NET do not provide very much in terms of themes and styles. Windows Forms is one of the earliest .NET platforms that originated with the first version of .NET Framework. And while Microsoft has made tons of improvements over the years, the overall look and feel of the application is not something that Microsoft has invested a lot of tooling into. And this is because these Windows applications are designed and also, subsequently limited to inherit from the operating system. The idea is that a desktop application, they're typically used for internal operations and productivity apps. The majority of users are happy with a standard Windows style. It used to be called, Battleship Gray whenever, the operating system was a lot of dull gray colors. And this standard Windows style is designed to match the user's operating system. So with newer versions of Windows, there's less gray, a lot more white. And if you remember during the Windows XP days, there'd be a lot of blue or lots of colorful colors that the user could choose for their Windows system. But the point is that it's always taking on whatever setting the user has set. And a lot of times people don't even change their settings on Windows. And in .NET, these are called the system colors. Now, and one of the problems is that we can't just customize these system colors easily per application. So the system colors are how the controls and your UI inherits these attributes from the operating system. They're kind of like that magic element behind the scenes that allows one application to be published that can then be different on every user's machine. So it would have a slightly different look on Windows 10 versus Windows 11, but the user has to set some custom design in order to get a different look. A common scenario here could be high contrast, for people that are hard of viewing. The system colors is what you would use to take advantage of something like that. But we can't easily change the system colors for a single application, or at least it's not recommended because it means you're messing with the user settings and it can have some bad side effects. Another challenge we have is that the standard .NET controls, they have a very limited API when it comes to the appearance-related properties. There's really only a few things that you can customize easily on the standard .NET controls. And the official solution for doing advanced styling is to inherit and override all of the controls that you need in your application. And it's a lot of work, and a lot more than the average WinForms developer is doing. And this is the point where you typically then bring in third-party libraries. So now let me show you what a lot of this means in Visual Studio. So here I have a basic Windows Forms application. I can go ahead and add a few controls here, like a button. Let me add a numeric up, down, and we'll go ahead and add a tab control. So these are just standard .NET controls. And let's say if I wanted my application to take on a certain theme or color scheme that's not just this gray and white. You could select the control and you could look through the API. And there is a whole section in Visual Studio over here in the property grid called Appearance. So all of the appearance-related properties are here. And you'll notice for the button, there is a background color property. So we can go ahead and set that. And if you'll notice here, these different tabs, custom web system, the system tab here, this is showing the system colors. And this is a collection that I mentioned that basically would magically, so to speak, pull the settings from the user's machine. So these are not, this is just what Visual Studio shows. It may actually look different, when you're running on different machines. But if, for custom styling, you can choose any color you want. So let's say we're going to change this button to, some other color here. And let's see what other, we can also set a background image. That sounds pretty fun. If you ever play around with the button, you'll know that there's these different styles. So there's flat, there's pop-up. So if we change to a flat style, then that gives us even more properties. Like we can set the border color, we can set the border size, things like that. And button's probably one of the most customizable controls as far as style goes. Like what else could you want to do there, right? But let's go look at another control here, like the numeric up-down control. So if you have an input form, you probably have a bunch of these with some text boxes. This control has a back color property similar to the button. It also has a border style. If border here, we could just set it to fixed or none. And there's a forecolor. Forecolor is always like the text, so you have a background, you have a foreground. And if we look at the rest of these properties, that's basically it for the appearance. So there's no way to actually change the color of the border, the size of the border, and most importantly, those little buttons that are in the numeric up-down, we can't customize them. Moving on to the tab control, we see here, for the tab control itself, there's not really any style-related appearance properties aside from the font. And font is, of course, an important part of style as well. But if we actually look into the tabs collection, tab pages, there it is. So each tab page has its own appearance property. So there we can go in there, we can access some things like the background color of the tab. But again, we're not really getting full access to everything. Do we have a full rich API on customizing the border, customizing the style of the tabs? No. So in summary, these standard .NET controls do not provide many appearance properties for customizing them. And to do advanced customization, it means that you'd have to inherit and override the controls and create your own. And that is essentially what we've done with the ComponentOne products. We've essentially overridden all of the WinForms controls, all the basic controls, and provided our own, so that way we can provide themes. So let me talk now about what the ComponentOne themes provides. With the Component WinForms edition, we have over 40 built-in themes. So a built-in theme means that you can apply it to your entire application by just selecting or setting it in one place. Additionally, you can create your own themes using our theme designer. And there are a few helpful tools here. There's a theme controller. This is the actual component that you drop into your form in Visual Studio that helps you manage the themes. The theme designer is a separate standalone application for customizing the theme. And then we have a component called the C1 theme picker. And this allows you to dynamically set the theme at runtime, at least in a very quick and easy way. Now, let me guide you through how you can do all of these tasks. So the first thing you're going to want to do is whenever you're going to want to download the entire ComponentOne WinForms edition from our website, because that will give you the theme designer application. But normally, if you just want to quickly get started by setting a theme, you can actually just start adding the NuGet packages to your project. So you're going to want to look for the c1.win.themes. You're going to want c1.win.c1 themes if you're working with .NET Framework, or just c1.win.themes if you're working with .NET 8 or higher. And now what we can do is you look in your toolbox for the C1 theme controller component, and you can drag and drop that onto your form. And immediately you're going to see this thing pop up here that allows you to customize a theme for your application. At the top here is what we're going to look at first. This top dropdown is the application theme. So this allows us to set a theme for the entire application. So let's go through here and let me just pick one of these that I'm going to set in my application. And then I'm just going to hit OK. And we're going to come back and we're going to look at the rest of that dropdown in a bit. Now, one thing you'll notice is that the theme didn't immediately take effect. I'm going to show you why. But one thing that happens whenever you're setting the theme, it modifies the app config file. And that's where you're going to see the setting gets added as to which theme you've selected. Now, if we come back here and we open up our set themes menu from this little smart tag down here, we can actually see that the reason why that theme did not get applied to all of our controls is because they're all set to none. And usually that'll start to happen whenever you start to configure and customize the controls yourself. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set them all to default. And default kind of means it's going to inherit a theme if one is set. So now I'm going to hit OK, and now we should see that beige theme gets taken and applied across all of these standard controls. And so that is one good point to point out, is that our themes do support the standard controls, but we only support the standard controls as far as the API allows. So for example, we can't go in and customize these little buttons on the numeric up-down or the actual tab header pages. And that's because those controls do not have a public API for that. For us to support it, we would have to create our own controls. And that is essentially what we do with the ComponentOne WinForms edition. So let me show like some of these ComponentOne replacement controls for these, so you can actually see what our theme would look like applied to some of our controls. So we have the C1 button, which basically the only reason why you would ever use C1 button is probably just to get the themes. And then we also have, replacing the numeric up down, we have the numeric edit control. And instead of the tab control, we have the C1 docking tab. As the name suggests, it also supports docking. So now let's go back to this theme controller for a second here. So we open up the little smart tag, we hit set themes, and so far I set the theme at the entire application. The next section here I want to point out is this second dropdown, the C1 theme controller dropdown. Now what this is sort of like that next level down. This is setting the theme on this C1 theme controller. Now typically in your application, you're going to have many forms. In order for our themes to work across all the forms, you're going to have a theme controller on every form. Simply just add it to the form that essentially enables the themes to work on that form. But if you set it at the application level, you only have to set it one time. And then all the theme controllers in your application will inherit that. But this second dropdown allows you to change the theme per form at a very high level, an easy level. So let's say we want to change this form to greenhouse. We hit OK. We're now going to notice this form will take on the greenhouse theme. And if I had another form with a theme controller on it, it would stick with that beige theme. The next section here is, if you look down in this section, we can actually change the theme per individual control. So if we want the button, or let's say the tab control, to take on the beige theme, we could manage that granularly through this section. And if, let's say, you don't like the way any theme looks for a certain control, you can simply set it to none. And that will basically force it to use the default theme for that control. Another thing on this little pop-up here, these little buttons here, that I used one earlier, these are just allow you to help quickly select a lot of controls. So if you have a more complex form, this list can get very long, and to have to go through and set them all could be time consuming. So these buttons are really just to help you hurry that along. So let me now show you what some of these themes look like across a bigger application. So hopefully this runs here. So if you download the ComponentOne WinForms edition, you will find the samples that we installed. There are samples for the ComponentOne themes. Okay, so this is one of the samples we shipped that just shows a bunch of ComponentOne controls just in a sample form. And you can quickly select through a lot of these themes just to see what a lot of them look like. Now, you'll notice a lot of the themes we have are for Microsoft Office related things. And you're probably wondering if we're going to be releasing any new Office themes. And the answer is that yes, we do have plans to release Office 365 themes in our 2024 V1 release. And a lot of these themes, you know, the general rule of thumb for a good theme, I would say, is to stick with a lot of like neutral colors. You have light colors, whites and grays. And I think a really nice and sharp theme adds in a little pop of color. So something like probably our Office 2016 colorful and the green one. It's a lot of neutrals, but there's just a little bit of color, just enough to give it a little personality, such as that. So next we're going to talk about how we can customize a theme. So one of the things is that if you're going to customize a theme, one of the reasons you might want to do it is you might want to just extend one of our built-in themes. You might also want to create a new theme from scratch to match your own company branding. So if your company uses a lot of red, maybe you want to incorporate red elements. And as I said, some of these tips for good design are stick with some neutral colors. One of the more modern themes we have is the Office green theme that I'm showing here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show how to create a custom theme using our theme designer. And right here is what I have, a sample application that I'm going to theme. And this is using our ribbon. It's using a flex grid. It's using a sidebar with a data filter. So in order to launch the theme designer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually try and find the ComponentOne control panel. So when you download ComponentOne, any edition from our website, you're going to get this ComponentOne control panel application. This is where you can choose to install the WinForms edition. And if you click on here, there's an apps tab. And from the apps tab is where you can launch standalone applications like our report designer and as well as our theme designer. So I'm going to go ahead and open the theme designer from here. And while that's loading, I'm also going to show you a mock-up I did. So what I'm thinking is, because I'm the product manager for ComponentOne, and if I'm designing an application, I might want to incorporate some of that ComponentOne branding in there. And ComponentOne uses a lot of red. But I probably don't want to create an application that's just entirely red. I think that's not really what's in style right now. It's a very monochromatic colored application. I'm going to want to use a lot of neutral grays and whites, blacks, but I want to add some nice bold red somewhere. So I came up with this mock-up that you see here, where I'm thinking of doing like the entire top section, essentially like the ribbon and anything up there, as the ComponentOne red. And then down in the middle, we'll have some shades of gray to differentiate between the sidebar and the main panel. And then to really frame it, I'll do some more red along the bottom. And I have here these color codes just so that I can remember them. Okay, so this is what the theme that we're going to try to create. So now I've opened up here the C1 theme designer. And the first thing you're going to want to do is create a new theme. So I'm going to hit File, New, and we'll give the theme a name. We'll call it C1 Red Theme. And you can design the theme from scratch, or you can base it off of one of our existing themes. I usually recommend basing it off of one of our existing themes, just because it's going to save you a lot of time. Even though our theme designer does make it easy to create a theme, it can still be very time consuming to go through all of the different properties and settings, which I'm going to show you. So starting with an existing one can help just sort of speed the process along. So I'm going to start with that Office 2016 colorful, and that will be the base. We're going to go ahead and create this. Now, the way this theme designer is laid out, along the left here, we have essentially all of the ComponentOne control libraries. The top is basically just ways to help you find the properties and sort of change some of the settings for viewing. And in the main panel here, we have a mock-up of just a bunch of controls sort of thrown together. And we actually have a whole bunch of different layouts and things that you can try. So if you want to look at like, what does the print preview control look like? What does split container, radial menu, input panel, a whole bunch of input controls. You can sort of change the preview here. And if you have this active preview button highlighted, that will then allow you to essentially just select a control on here, and it'll automatically select it over on the left. But the process for designing a theme is you're basically going to go through all of these properties for the controls and customize the colors, the fonts, anything that you want to modify. But the real trick here is to understand and work with the base theme properties. So the base theme properties are things that are going to be shared across all of the controls. And one of the great features of our theme designer here is that you can actually add your own properties to this. So the real brute force way of designing a theme, of course, I would go into, let's say, the ribbon control, and start playing around with all the different properties. So like the form, get the background set. And if you notice, when I look in here, currently, pretty much all of the properties are already set to this little icon that is a little green arrow in a red box. And that means that it's referenced, meaning it's pulling in a value from probably the base theme properties. And you're going to find that a lot with like the built-in themes. Now you can, of course, override that and just set the background color to whatever you want it to be. But in my case, since I'm probably going to use this red color a lot throughout my theme, I would like to just define that red color in one spot. So what I'm going to do is, with the base theme property section selected, I'm going to hit this little add button up here. And what this is allowing me to do is adding a new property to my theme. And I'm going to name this, we'll just call it the C1 base color. It's going to be of a type color. Now our themes can also do other things aside from colors. I'm kind of focusing on the colors because it's the most visual thing, but you can also use with fonts and border thicknesses and all that kind of stuff. But this is going to be a color property. Hit OK. And now what I can do is I can go in here and I can set this color to my custom red color that I want to do. So I wrote that down. It's the RGB value is 214, and then 86, and then 76. And then you be careful. By default, a lot of these things are set to transparent, so you have to make sure that you set the alpha value back to fully visible. All right, so there's my red color. And now I'm going to go ahead and add another property, because if you notice, I had like another, a darker red color. So we're going to call that the C1 accent color. And this one is going to be set to 156, 33, 54. All right, so now I have my two colors here. And what's nice is that I've now defined them one time. And now I can go and use them throughout all my controls. So next thing I want to do is I want to set that color to be the background color for some of my ribbon elements. Now the ribbon is a complex control. There's a lot to set on the ribbon. So I've already taken some notes here just so I can find them again. But let's see. So what I know is that the main background of the ribbon is under Content, Default, Back Color. So this background property right here, currently it's referencing something. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to be a new reference. I think because I've now selected it, the designer's loading it. So when you go to set a color down into a specific control, you'll notice I could set it to a solid color. Some of the controls, depending on the feature, even support gradients. So you can create some real beautiful looking styles with gradients. But in this case, I'm just using a solid color. I'm going to go to the reference tab here. And I'm going to scroll up to my custom theme, my base color, and I select that. And now the background of my ribbon is pointed at that C1 color I defined. The next thing I want to set is the app button. So you can see here, there's still some parts up here I need to theme. So the app button is where it says File. So we're going to set that one to the accent color. So it's the default background. We'll set that to the accent red. And we also got to get those tabs. So the tab, I believe it's the pressed value we need to set. We're going to set that to the main color, I believe. And then we can also set the hot one, so like when the mouse hovers over it, we're going to set that to the other red, the darker red. That way there's a little bit of contrast there for the selected one. Okay. Another thing I want to set, you see I have that blue up there. That's actually like the form background for the ribbon. So we're going to change that as well to be red. And that's where we'll bring in that dark red for that top border of the application. So that should be the form background. And then last but not least, the status bar. At the very bottom, I want the status bar to be red. Now the status bar is part of our ribbon library, which is why it's underneath the ribbon group here. So we're going to set the status bar default background. To I think it's just the base red that I set. So those are all now referencing. Another thing I want to quickly do here, actually, I forgot to do it with the app button, because that text is now really hard to read. I want to make sure that the text is readable on that dark red. So let me go back to my app button. You see how I set the background is referencing that color. The text color, I'm just going to manually set that to white for now. But as you can see here, this is basically the process. You're going through here, picking and choosing all these different properties. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save my theme. And I've created a little folder here on my computer called themes. I'm going to call it, it's called the C1 Red theme. We're going to save it there. The theme is now saved. Now what I can do is I'm going to jump back to Visual Studio and set the theme. So to do this, once we have our theme controller on our form, we open up the little smart tag, and then now you're going to set Add Themes. And then you're going to browse for where you've created that theme and add it to your application. Once it's added, you'll notice that it gets added as an embedded resource in your project. But now I can start setting it to various controls and places in my application by opening up the Set Themes. And it'll now appear at the bottom of the list under my user-defined theme. So I'm going to go ahead. And actually, what I plan to do here, just for the sake of time, I'm going to use built-in themes for the other components. So this is only going to be used on the ribbon. So let's see here. Let's see if I can do this. So what we're going to do is I'm going to set my ribbon to be my custom theme, my red theme. And then we'll set the data filter, which the panel on the left is going to be sort of that gray. So I'm just going to use, for the sake of time, one of our built-in themes that's very gray, and that's the expression light theme. And then the flex grid, I want it to be kind of light. So, but I'm actually going to use this Windows theme that has a little bit of red in it, just so that it kind of matches with the rest of my application, with the red theme anyway. And the status bar, we will also set to the custom red theme that I just created. Let's see if that works. And there we go. Now I can build and run this, and we'll see what it looks like with all the data populated. So here's my running application. So you can see here, I chose this built-in theme that has a little bit of red. It's not the exact same red, but I could go in there and I could fine tune it. I could either create a separate theme for each control, depending on how I really want to structure my files and my themes. Really will determine how you want to set up your different theme files. As you can see here, this mouse over is gray. That's probably an inherited thing. That's why I recommend inheriting a theme that you like that's probably the closest to what you're designing, because there's going to be little things that you might miss here and there. Ideally, I might want to change this text to be a bit more readable, maybe change the grid lines. There's actually not even any text on this application button, things like that. But this is the basic gist of creating a custom theme. So we've added a built-in theme, we've created this custom theme, and both of these are easily done at design time. And the next and final thing I want to show you is how to change a theme at runtime. So a very common scenario for this is providing like a light and a dark theme for your users. You've probably used a lot of applications that have a light and a dark theme, because there's a lot of users out there that like that dark background with the light text versus what's probably more common, the light background with the dark text. So let's say, for example, I've created these two themes here. I went ahead and I created these two themes called dark theme, called light theme. I've designed them both in the theme designer. I've saved them. And now I want to add them to my application and configure them so the user can set them. So the first thing I want to do is I want to add them to the application. So to do that, this is kind of like a workaround way to do it. I'm actually going to I'll add them through the theme controller one at a time. So I'm going to add my dark theme, and I'm going to add the light theme. And really all this is kind of just a quick way for me to get them into the project. But then what I'm going to need to do is they're set to embedded resource. And depending on how, you'll see the code that I'm going to show you. Depending on how you want to access them, you can access them from the embedded resource. The code I wrote is just going to access them as if they were a content file in the build output. So I'm going to quickly just switch them back over to content. Actually, before I do that, let me show you the theme picker control. So with the component WinForms edition, we have a component called C1 Theme Picker. And this allows you to quickly set a theme at runtime. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop this to the form. And I'm going to go ahead and just dock it up at the top right. Now, what I want to do first, before I start messing with that code, let me build and run this and show you how the theme picker works. Okay, well, the theme picker is not docked properly, but what it does is it basically just shows all of the themes that are registered with the theme controller on that form. It allows you to change them at runtime. And one thing you'll notice is as I choose one, that not everything on the form got set, number one. That's the first issue. But number two, yeah, that's pretty much the main issue. But number two, we don't necessarily want to ship all these themes, especially some of these older Office themes. We don't really want to ship them. So we need to modify this further. So as I was saying before, what I want to do is I want to actually set these two themes that I added as just to be content. And we'll copy them to the output folder. This way, I can then load them at runtime. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my code behind, and in order to remove the themes, the built-in themes that are with the theme picker, I need to unregister them with the theme controller. So it's basically one line of code to unregister the theme. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cycle through all the themes and unregister them, basically clear it out. The next thing I want to do is I want to add those two themes, my two custom themes. And this is what I was talking about. The code I wrote here is registering them from like a file path, but there's probably a way to do it with an embedded resource. And then finally, what I want to do is I want to reset the theme controller, basically set my theme picker, theme controller property to the theme controller on the form. This will just reset it, refresh it, so to speak. And then finally, what I want to do is I want to set the default theme to the dark theme. So now when I run it, it should be dark. But one last thing I need to do is open up my theme controller at design time. And in order to support dynamic themes, you have to make sure that the theme is set to default for the components that you want to be modified. Because right now I have essentially the ribbon is set to my custom red theme. That's a hard-coded decision there. That's, and probably this will probably crash because I've unregistered the red theme, and then this won't work. But what I want to do is I want to set all these to default, every control, and that means it'll basically be inherited from whatever I set. So now I can go ahead and run this, and now this should work. So there we go. So here we have this dark theme that's loaded by default. And then let's say, I have some setting in my application. The user can now switch it to the light theme. And of course, I can save the setting. I can reload it. And the theme picker is really just a quick way to get themes added. Of course, you can choose any other UI, toggle buttons. You can put it in the file menu. Basically, the theme controller has API that allows you to set themes. That's basically all you need in order to set the custom themes. So that's basically it for my whole presentation today. So are there any questions? Let's see, where's my slide? There we go. Okay, so question is, do we have any Office 365 themes? Yes, so we are planning to work on our Office 365 themes and release them in our 2024 V1 release this June. So we plan to have at least most of the WinForms controls supported for those themes. And of course, everything I demoed today is specifically WinForms. We also have plans to add Office 365 themes in WPF in a later release, most likely our 2024 V2 release. All right. If you have any other questions, please submit them. And of course, you can download the ComponentOne WinForms edition at developer.meshes.com/ComponentOne. All right. And if we don't have any other questions, then I think we can wrap up today. So thank you, everybody, for joining in. And thank you for watching. And thank you for choosing ComponentOne.